Hello, everyone. Welcome to the next edition of the DFS Down Under show here, live streaming here on Thursday night here in Hobart Town. My name is Smatho 10. Next to me is the big Hef, Beatrice and Hef, and we're here to break down here Friday night AFL contest for round 7. Richmond Tigers and the Western Bulldogs. Hef, how are you today, mate?
Oh, good, Smatho. What a massive match that is going to be.
It is.
They're sort of the new team on the block this year, the Dogs. We know they've been round the mark, but they're flying. Richmond's coming off being shown up by Melbourne, but they're still the premiers. They're not going to lie down 2 weeks in a row, you wouldn't have thought.
No, I wouldn't think so too. Very impressive side, the Bulldogs, but looking forward to breaking down this match very shortly. But we are here thanks to Draftstars. Draftstars is Australia's #1 daily fantasy platform, offering Australian and New Zealand entrants the choice to win big here for AFL Fantasy. Yes, we are live streaming the show tonight, so if you do have any questions about this particular slate or anything throughout the show, pop them in the chat. We'll be able to get to them throughout the show. If you're watching on Facebook, put in the comment section. If you're on YouTube, give us a like, subscribe, hit the notification button. All those things are here to help us out with the particular stream. But first thing is first, Hef. So this time last week, we saw that hidden message here from Draftstars. Turns out it is the 300K live final presented by Draftstars here for the AFL. Mate, you've been to a couple of these. We didn't quite guess it last week. We did have some theories, but we didn't want to let the cat out of the bag, as they say. We didn't want to say, it's going to be a live final and, whatever. But
I didn't know, Smather, so I couldn't. You didn't take any chances with me. I was horribly away. It's a massive, massive prize pool.
300,000. Now, for guys who are watching on live chat, how excited about it for this particular contest? Pop a comment in the chat. Are you going to win a golden ticket? Now, there are qualifiers throughout the AFL season, so there's going to be 155 tickets here up for grabs. So that's an increase from 102, 104 back in 2019. Obviously, we didn't have one in 2020 due to the pandemic. Now, Draftstars have indicated that the only way that you can get a golden ticket is by winning a qualifier. There'll be no fast passes, which will be in the past. So you couldn't just simply buy your way in. You need to get a golden ticket. There will be contests throughout the AFL season. There will be some contests as well for NRL, PGA, and other contests throughout Draftstars. And also, if you want more information, check your email. There is plenty of information in that particular email that you received during the week in terms of the details for the live final. So, Hef, as you would know, you don't usually tell people, but you are a 2-time live finalist, both for the BBL and the AFL in 2019.
I actually tell everyone that, Smather.
Do you?
I always say yes. I was in them. I didn't do any good, but I was in them.
All right. So obviously you got to get there in the first place. Now we might do some DFS sessions throughout the season, but obviously for entrants who haven't gone into a qualifier before, what are the things that you have to try and think about when you're into these particular contests?
The first thing you've got to do is get very good at praying to the DFS gods, because they are a real thing. The second thing you have to remember is that they are generally winner-take-all contests. So coming second is just going to be pure heartache. You're not going to get cash like you usually do in these DFS contests by placing in the top 10, 15% of the contest. It's either win or go home. So when you build your lineups, you've got to keep that in mind. You've got to make sure you have a bit of uniqueness about your lineups. If you roll out a chalky team that's probably going to finish up in the top half, that's no good to you in these contests. You've got to have something a bit different. So whether that's playing a contrarian stack so that if it does come off, you've got less people to compete with for that #1 spot. If you can't get away from the chalky lineups, how about just throwing in a guy who doesn't make any sense at all? I did come really high in a contest once by playing Mark Baggerley, who I would probably never play in my life, and he just happened to be the last guy that fit in, and I couldn't be bothered rebuilding the lineup, so I said, I'll throw that in. And old Baggers went forward and kicked about 6 against GWS for when he was playing for Essendon. It was a play that I just couldn't ever play in a million years, but it was just different, and somehow it got me through. So there are a couple of tips I would say. You want to make sure those guys have a pretty good ceiling, those random guys, if you are going to throw in one for a bit of uniqueness. The other thing I'll mention, just remember that there's long losing streaks in winner take all contests. So be a bit responsible, because if you're not winning, you are not getting any money back at all by cashes and stuff like you usually would in a contest. So just don't get carried away and be a bit responsible. And the last tip would be, I'm not religious, but pray again, because they're bloody hard to win. And if you do, you're going to have a lot of fun.
Yes, there are a lot of fun. It is a lot of fun sweating it out, knowing that if you can grab a ticket, it's one of the best, I would say, feelings when you're playing DFS. We've been quite fortunate to attend these particular finals, and as Brad here said, how is it, boys? Like, well, it's a really great opportunity to meet your fellow combatants. I remember my first one where I knew a couple. Obviously, me and Hef, we went to the BBL one, but we were pointing at people trying to figure out who's who. And by the time the cricket finished, we were able to pick up some great mates on the day, and obviously some great stories as well. So we might share those throughout the season as time gets towards the live final, which is going to be in August. So look, plenty of time. So, I mean, you can go your hardest early if you want to, but as long as you have a bit of fun and gamble responsibly, you're going to have a legitimate shot on winning some serious prize money.
Apologies to our great mate in the chat there, Brent.
Yes, I'll bring it back up.
Bring it back up. Sorry, I missed that when I was in full flight. I did knock him out on adjustments, which is as brutal as it gets. I still apologise for that, Brent. But as you see in his profile picture there, he did make a live final.
Yes. I met Brento, so he's a very good guy from North Queensland. So hopefully he's in it. Looks like he's in it. So, all right. So obviously, to get a ticket, we need to get some advice out to the viewers of the show here. So let me bring up this first of all. What are we playing for on Friday night? We are playing for the $75,000 prize pool from Draftstars. 7:50 p.m. start here on Friday night. Bulldogs are favourites at around $1.50, 55, where you can find your bookmaker line there. 10.5 line, total's 158.5. We've got no issues there with the weather. It's a nice and clear day at the MCG, so it'll be a nice night. As we got here, the $75,000 contest, $7,415 to first place, 7:50 p.m. Now, the qualifiers are continuing. There's the $2 qualifier for this one and the $50 qualifier. As already, I'm not sure you know, Hef, but we're up to our third $50 ticket contest.
The third one?
We're already filled 2, and we're still 24 hours before the game. So there is a bit of an
filled. I didn't know 2 had been filled. That's unreal.
It's been 2. Unbelievable. Yeah. So let us bring up the Draftstars lobby here, and we're going to check out the rest of these contests that we are playing for. The usual contests, such as the high roller, the mini, the 5 is there. But as you can see here, we're already into our third ticket, 700 in the qualifier. So that will grow throughout Friday for us. Let's have a look at the team news before I jump into the contest. Now, a couple of changes here for the Tigers. Riley Collier Dawkins, I think that's how you pronounce it, will make his debut for the Tigers with no Dustin Martin and no Kane Lambert. He's actually been omitted. Oh, no, he's injured. As for the Doggies, they seem to change their side every week with so many changes. So we've got here Josh Shackey, Mitch Hannon, Patrick Lipinski, and Riley West come in for Josh Dunkley, Lockie McNeil, Lathan Vandermeer, who we were pretty keen on, but he got injured last week, Ling John, and Tim English. Hef, let me get up the contest, and I want your first initial thoughts for this particular contest for Friday night.
Well, let's try and work out these team changes, because there's a bit going on to get our heads around here. First of all, with Richmond, obviously they lose Dusty, and that's one guy out of your set amount, 70-80% of the game. So Jack Ross is in. He was the sub last week, so he's getting a full game. Lambert is not a guy we have to worry about so much about centre bounces. He hasn't been in there basically all season. So it's just Dusty that they're trying to replace. Now, Collier Dawkins, who comes in, he's sort of your inside bull prototype, not much good anywhere else by the sound of things. So I assume they're going to give him a fair bit of run through the middle of the ground because clearances is his go, Collier Dawkins. And then Jack Ross is sort of similar. We know what we get from Jack Ross. We've seen him play a bit. But, yeah, it does. They've still got Cochin, Edwards and Bolton playing big centre bounce minutes. So it'll be interesting to see what they do there because Jack Graham's been sort of left on the outside. Hasn't had much work in the bounces, and he's usually the next guy in as well. So all of a sudden, there's a lot of guys in this team who can fill a role in the inside, and who gets the nod is probably going to play a pretty big part there.
It is going to play a big part. Now, also, we are here from Daily Fantasy Rankings, which is your number one free resource for AFL fantasy tools. And I jumped on the website earlier today to check out the free data tools that are available. And here are my notes for the Dogs and the Tigers. First of all, I pretty much didn't have to change my notes from last week, Hef, because the Dogs still leak to opposition backs. Plug them in. I didn't have to delete much here. The Dogs are tied against the forwards. Look what happened last week. Dogs lead the competition in disposal. They still do that. Now, for the Tigers also leak to opposition backs. They're actually number 2 behind the Dogs there. And the Tigers, or Tiger, oh no, put the S on the Tigers. They concede the 4th most disposals in the comp. So they let the opposition have a fair bit of ball there, mate. So let's have a look at this first position. We're always going to start here with the rucks. And we've only got the 2 options here, Hef. So Toby Nankervis at $12,000 versus Steph Martin. I made a lot of notes about old Sweet was going to come back in, but I had to hit the old delete button after teams dropped. So we've only got the 2 choices here. Let's start with Stephen Martin, 10,330. Not much of a fantasy beast this season, but although there's a couple of scores here of 62 and 70, which could get you 6 or 7x. So what do you think of old Stefan first up?
Well, I guess the thing to think about with Steph is he's usually got his old mate Tim English, who hasn't been doing a lot of rucking, but he's a genuine second ruck option. So if you sort of look, he's been taking 20 to 30% of the centre bounces. Now, they don't bring Sweet in. They're going with Steph, and they replace English with Josh Shackey. I'm assuming it's either going to be Shackey or Josh Bruce who plays that sort of second ruck role. Because they're not as adept as, say, English, it'd be interesting to see whether Steph Martin gets a little boost. But he's getting pretty old, Steph, so I don't think they're going to give him a real Toddy Goldstein 100% run around the ground job. If this was 12 months ago, I'd be super excited to be on Steph Martin here because past history, years gone by, we know you want to avoid Steph and you want to play the guy against Toby Nankervis. This year hasn't quite been that. We've been on this whole Steph's on his last legs. Nankervis is actually a negative matchup this year for opposition rucks, which is unreal considering what we've been dealing with the last few years. So he looks obvious, Nankervis. Martin's ceiling does look capped. I'm still not going all in Nankervis because we've got 6 games we're going off this year and we've got many years of data behind us saying the other way. But yeah, I'm probably going to be 75-ish% Nankervis out of the 2.
Okay. Yeah, I reckon you're pretty much nailed on that. The ownership, so I reckon we're around a 70-30 split with the field here. So for all intents and purposes, we go the safer route here with Toby Nankervis. Hopefully can hit that 90, 100 and limit Martin to that low 50, 60 score. So that'll give you a bit of a leg up in that particular position. Let's move on to the back line. Now, as I said in my notes, the Dogs give up points to this particular position. And look at what the Giants did last week. Lockie Ash with 146 really backed that up. So you took unbelievable 15 marks as well. So that chip around the back or intercept marks is quite a thing here with the Tigers. So let's have a look here at Tigers options. Now, first of all, the two real main options here is Jaden Short at 12,520 and Basher Hooley at 11,370. But you can also throw here in Liam Baker at 10,990 after taking 105 fantasy points against a Melbourne team. They were very, very stingy for back. So they're my three main Tiger guys there. Also, 3 and the 2 doesn't go. Who do you think we should be prioritising out of this little trio to start with?
Well, let's think about last week. We talked about the Dogs giving up a ton of uncontested marks, and the Giants weren't a big team for accumulating those sort of marks. We wondered how it would go. Like you just mentioned, Ash had 15 marks. Cumming had 7 of his own. They both turned up. Perryman, Taylor, they both had 8 marks. So even though the Giants aren't that type of team, it seemed that the tactics of the Bulldogs maybe forced them into that chipping style across halfback. Poor old Stewie Lowe would be gutted looking at blokes like Lockie Ash getting 15 marks these days, wouldn't he? But it's a bit similar this week. Richmond are not an uncontested marking team either. It didn't matter last week for the Giants. Maybe it doesn't matter this week for Richmond. The obvious two guys, I'm not getting that enamoured with Liam Baker. I much prefer Hooley and Short. Hooley is especially well priced at 11,000. It's unbelievable. Last week, like you talk about, Melbourne don't give up a lot of points to the backs. So I'm sort of looking at that thing, and it didn't really suit Hooley and Short. And then Baker was the guy to stand out. But in a match that really is probably going to suit Short and Hooley, I think they're going to flip around, and it's probably not going to be as advantageous there for Liam Baker, who is third nose in the trough when it comes to these Richmond backs. So I think Hooley and Short is going to be a really popular back line for many teams, and I think it's for very good reason. If you want to roll the dice on a cheaper Tiger like Asprey or Grimes, in a vacuum, it's probably not a bad spot. They can get, like we talked about Taylor having the 8 marks last week, similar type of players, so they could outperform their value, but it's not that good if they hit value if you've got the blokes like Short and Hooley absolutely crushing value up the top of the slate. So, yeah, I'm really keen on Hooley and a little bit less on Short, but they're the two standouts.
All right. Well, let's have a look at the Dogs options as well, because obviously the Tigers are right up there with the Dogs in terms of leaking points at the back. So this is going to be a really important position here as well. Caleb Daniel here has lost a bit of form here, 12,420, but this could be right up his alley as well. Bailey Dale, I was all over Bailey Dale last week, and I was suffering until he kicked a couple of late snags for a 77, so he's available at 12,000 as well. They're the two that are at the top of the pile there. So let's talk about Doggies options. I wouldn't say the contrarian because this is the player to do it, but there's not many spots here available.
There isn't. You're going to have to make a decision. A lot of the ways you go, they might cancel each other out. There's going to be so many good backline plays here. I'm happy to give Daniel a chance here in a pretty good matchup for him. The price has come down. You don't have to look early in the season. He still was coming up with those big numbers. Jure is probably the value guy, I think. If you look down, he's around the $10,000 mark, and he's very capable of getting, as you can see, he's got a number of 80s there, and I'd probably prefer him at the cheaper price compared to his almost clone-like teammate in Hayden Crozier, very similar players. They're the two guys, and then if you want to go right down the bottom looking for a cheap guy, Jason Johanneson continues to plummet in price, 5,600. He's 10x, basically 2 of the 4. The only thing I would say is, even though he's listed as a defender, which would indicate this being a really good matchup, he played a fair bit across half forward last week. So I'd much prefer to be picking backs in this slate than picking forwards. So that's something that would turn me away from Johanneson. But if you are looking to load up everywhere else, especially through this midfield, he's a reasonable cheap option.
All right. I'm going to come back here to the Tigers options here. I really, really like this spot for them. I'm going to come back here to Liam Baker. I know you don't really like him, but he's going to go here at 10,990 for me in my particular side. But I'm sure, look, this is going to be really key for this particular side. We can't emphasize enough that this is a great spot for both teams, and you have to pretty much nail your back line here. So,
Yeah.
in saying that though, let's move on to mids because obviously you're going to need to nail those as well. But there's a clear divide when it comes to the midfielders between these two teams. You've got the premium options of the Dogs, and then the workman-like nature of the Tigers mids. It's a very hard matchup for the Tigers here because these Dogs tend to score a lot of fantasy points. So let's get into the mids here on Draftstars, and let's start with the Bulldogs with Jack McRae at 17,400. And I'll let you off the leash here, Hef. See me who you can find in this particular midfield.
Let's talk about what happens without Dunkley in this side. Now, Dunkley hasn't been full-time gutsing himself. He has been playing a bit across half forward. His centre bounces, he's been 40 to 50% pretty consistently through the season. So there's some bounces that have to be made up by either the incoming guys or the guys who have been squeezed out. Now, the two guys who have been squeezed out mainly are Bailey Smith and Lockheed Hunter. When Dunkley went off, Bailey Smith was used in the middle a few times, which was the first time for the year. They bring in Lipinski, who's a guy that can be used in a similar type of role to those two guys, but earlier in the year, they did tend to play him up forward a bit. I would think they might use Smith more in the middle. I think they might move Hunter from that forward role up to a wing a bit more often to replace Bailey Smith. And for that reason, I think they're the two guys that are probably a bit underpriced and are going to get a little bit more opportunity here. But yeah, McRae's up to 17,000, but I see he's got 190 under his belt in one of these recent matchups. Unbelievable. 159. Yeah, 159 last week. He's just an absolute guts. Let's just talk one little more theory. We had a guy in the chat last week who tipped Tom Liberatore to us, and did a bit of a digging. We were looking for contested ball winners and tacklers against GWS, and obviously Libba fit the bill and he went berserk. So that was a great call by, I'm terribly sorry I forget his name, who it was in the chat. Speak up if you're on, because that was a ripper. But now we come up against Richmond. Richmond give up a ton of uncontested ball, so that's the total opposite to what we were looking for last week. So maybe it's time to, if you did play Libba, cash in. I wouldn't be going back to the well on Libba. I'd be looking more for a couple of those guys that we mentioned, Bailey Smith, Lockheed Hunter. They're our uncontested guys, outside of the obvious guys at the top.
All right, let's talk about Tigers then. And as you can see here, the leader of now the midfield is a bloke named Shay Bolton, 13,210. Great form lately, 122 last week against the D's, 107 against the Saints. With no Dustin Martin, he's going to get more and more midfield time here. So obviously Bolton with forward availability will be pretty popular. But we've got to have to look at other Tigers options as well, because they're going to be fairly low owned, and these could be the contrarian players that could stand you out of the pack. Any of note here for the Tiggies on Friday?
Yeah, well, let's start with Bolton because he's in ripper form. But this is the hardest spot in the comp at the moment if you're a midfielder coming up against the Dogs. He's creeping up there in price for good reason. At 13,000, I would prefer to avoid Bolton rather than pile in if I had to have a pick. I just think he's starting to get up there in price, and this is just not a good spot. We've talked a bit about what's going to happen with the likes of Graham, Collier Dawkins, Ross. Let's talk about these two cheap guys, Collier Dawkins and Ross, both at 5,000. So Collier Dawkins was drafted as an inside midfielder, was always going to be a bit of a slow burn, they've come out and said. Had 30 touches in round one, only had the 13 last week. He's not a guy that's going to get a lot of outside ball. He's more of a tackler, contested clearance style player. So 5,000 is very hard for someone not to make value at 5K, but I don't think he's a gimme. I'm thinking we're going to see more Sam Berry, less Tom Powell, if that sort of helps your thinking. He's at the same price as Jack Ross, is a guy we've sort of got to know a bit over the past few seasons. He's been in and out of the team. You see there he's coming off at 26. He didn't come on till the third quarter. I think Collier Dawkins is going to be popular because these new guys always are, but I'd prefer to go Ross myself, at least to know what we're getting. When he has played this year, he's had about 20% of centre bounce attendances. I would lean to Ross over Collier Dawkins for those reasons.
Yeah. When we saw Collier Dawkins, lining up for a debut, you think, yep, beauty, here's our 5K play for the slate. But now that they've named Ross to play the game, it's going to cost you another entry. Take it. If you're going to play a single entry and choose one of the blokes, you might as well just put a second. Well, I wouldn't say might as well, but if you like to, you can just put a second one in, make a little adjustment into Ross, and then you've got a bit of an each way bet there for us.
One guy's coming up. Yeah, one guy's playing his first ever AFL game against the hardest midfield in the comp, and then one guy's had a few seasons and a few games, knows a bit more what to expect. So, yeah, I prefer Ross for that.
Yeah. All right. Let me fill out this particular side while they're in that. I am going to go. I do want Shay Bolton at 13-2. Like he's got the ceiling. He's the only really Tiger mid that has a really great ceiling through the midfield. So I'm going to pop him in as a forward. I'm going to come back here to the doggies. I can't afford McRae here, so I'm going to go Bontempelli. I'm going to go against here for Liver. I reckon he'll still get enough clearance work. Tigers might try and slow it down, so he goes in as well. And then Bailey Smith at 12,250 is the one for my mid. So that stretches out there for me there. All right, let's move on to the forwards. Also, you have touched on what happens here without Mr. Dunkley. So there's not many. We talk about there's not many forward-only availability here, but we do have Aaron Norton at 12,520. We also do have Josh Bruce at 10,006, Jack Rewalt at 10,040. The Meatball, Tommy Lynch, Daniel Rioli, and you can come down here. Rewalt's there. Josh Shackey returns at 7,000 and Riley West at 6,900. So is there any love for these particular forward-only status players for this particular slate that you can pick out?
Oh, it's hard to like. It's hard to like the Tigers. Like they can bob up and get on the end of a few if they get the dogs out the back, but I don't think any of them are going to accumulate, so to speak. I'd much prefer to play, take my risk on dogs. Norton is getting up there in price. Josh Bruce might get a little boost from if he's the second ruck, or Josh Shackey likewise. I don't want to be piling into any of them. I prefer to sort of sprinkle my exposure there. The one guy I do like, if I can steal your thunder and get off the straightforward ones, is Lockheed Hunter. He's probably my favourite player of the slate here, Hunter, for the reasons I've mentioned earlier. Also, the fact I don't like a lot of the forwards, so being able to use one of these forward slots on a midfielder that I'm really keen on, I just love Lockheed Hunter in this spot. But that's not going to help you with your price, so I get the feeling there's a cheap guy that you're going to have a look at here, Smatho.
Yes, there is a cheap guy right down the bottom here, which is Mitch Hanahan. I think, geez, we gave Conan Uden the run around last week. Now I've got Mitch Hanan. I might have to go to some classes in terms of pronunciation, but 5,770. Can you help me out in terms of who Mitch is? Because I'm pretty keen on playing this guy if the dog is the favourites.
Yeah, he's an old Melbourne D's player.
That's right.
Medium size, good goal sense, can take a mark. He was a pretty handy player for the D's. Hannon bobbed in and out. If you do like the dogs, it's very possible he could bob up and kick 3 or 4. Mitch Hannon. He's very cheap there. Sort of remember him as being around a $7,000 to $8,000 player back when he was in Melbourne. So, yeah, if you are looking for a cheap guy, Riley West is a guy who might surprise as well. Another year in the system, predominantly known as a midfielder in the junior ranks, and he's sort of stuck playing up forward because it's hard to get a midfield role at the Dogs. But, he's a guy who I'd probably expect to see come on a little bit again this season. But I definitely wouldn't turn you off Hannah. But there's none of these forwards that I want to be pinning a heap of exposure to. I think one of them, two of them are going to bob up and kick goals. And if you can land on that right player, you're going to go a long way to winning the slate. But yeah, Hunter's clearly the guy for me up forward.
All right. I'll give you a chance to build your own team because there's my team for this particular site. I'm sticking by that one. Let's answer
Is Harvey
Brad's
going to turn? Yeah, is he going to turn?
Let's answer
Lynch
Brad's
loose?
question here. Is Harvey going to turn Lynch loose and let him be aggressive Tommy that we all know and love? Now, has he been tamed this year? I haven't seen anything that's bobbed up in terms of his demeanour. Does that the angry pills mean fantasy points? What do you reckon there, Hef?
Well, you may as well get angry because they're up against it, against this rampaging Bulldogs lineup. But they're only missing Dusty and Lambert. It's not like it's total panic stations for Richmond, and they got the system that they plug guys into. Anyone that can get a premiership medallion around Cameron McIntosh's neck, that's obviously a system working for them. 8,000, you can play Lynch. Like every once in a while, he's gonna go off. I just wouldn't play too much of him.
All right. Now, here's the chance here. Press the pause button if you're watching this show on Friday. Take a screenshot of this particular slide because I'm about to press this cross button. That deletes the team. So let's have a look here at your side, Hef. Let me run through who you're looking at. And obviously, we have to go Lockheed Hunter to start with 11,000. He's the first pick. So who else do you have?
He's up forward. Geez, you put me on the spot here, Smatho. We'll come back to the other forward spot. Give us Nank. Give us Hooley and Short.
Yes.
Give us Ross. Give us Bailey Smith.
Yep.
Go back to the forwards and give us Riley West.
Oh, a little bit of Riley. Yes.
For something different. And then midfielders, let's go.
Do you want McRae? Or are you going to come down to...
we're going to have to go Bont. No, give us Titchy Edwards and Treloar. That might fit.
And Treloar.
Easy. There
you go. Pause the video.
Golden ticket in 70
Golden
seconds.
ticket. Very good. All right, so make sure, so let me review this here. So make sure you get onto draftstars.com.au, into the variety of contests this week. Obviously, the gold tickets available. Obviously, the $75,000 contest. Make sure you give us a bit of a like this particular video. We like doing these live shows on here on Thursday nights. Hef, thank you for joining me on the live stream this evening. Before we go, there's a last comment here. Oh, here, Brad's back. I think can really shake up the doggies' backs if he's let off the leash. Look, this could be primetime viewing with Lynch ready to hit some people in the guts.
Who's he going to? Oh, he's going to get out. Alex Keith is in is super form this year. I assume he's going to go to Lynch. Shay Bolton's named at full forward in the latest bloody stupid team listings. But Keith's in ripping form this year. So Lynch, he's got his work cut out.
Even Easton Wood's a little bit of an angry ant, so he might play along. You never know. All right, Hef, let's wrap it up here. Thank you for joining us on the Down Under show here. Oh, hang on, before we go, last question. On Saturday, Hef, we haven't looked here. Took Miller on Saturday. Is he a free square? Oh,
well, is he ever a free square?
Oh, wow, he's been sensational.
I'll be honest, Brent, I haven't looked. But I'm doing the article this week, Brent. Don't worry about Jesse. He's off chasing the rain up in Queensland. I'm on there this week, so I'll look out for him in my article for you.
Do you know what his price is?
No idea.
17,400.
He's not a free square, Brent. We'll have a look at that tomorrow. One game at a time.
Excellent. Well, we'll wrap things up there. I'm looking forward to your article on dailyfantasyrankings.com.au. And as always, get onto draftstars.com.au to play AFL Daily Fantasy. Thank you, Hef, for joining us. And we'll look forward to seeing you next week for round 8 of the DFS Down Under show. See you then. Thanks, Hef.
Good luck. See you.
Cheers.